Last year I spent over $200 on seed packets, and when I laid them all out on my kitchen table, something hit me that I couldn't shake. I counted 63 packets. 63. And you know what the worst part was? About half of them were varieties I'd already grown the year before. Same tomatoes, same peppers, same beans. I was buying the same seeds over and over and over again, every single season. And that's when I started asking a question that, honestly, changed the entire way I garden. Why? Why was I doing this? And more importantly, why had nobody ever told me I didn't have to? 5 years ago, I was the person standing in the garden center aisle every single February, filling my cart with those little paper envelopes, like it was some kind of annual ritual I never questioned. I thought that's just what gardeners did. You buy seeds, you plant them, you harvest, and then next year, you go buy them all over again. It felt as natural as buying milk at the grocery store. I never even considered there was another option. But then something happened that cracked the whole thing wide open for me. I was visiting an older woman named Dorothy, who lived about 2 miles down the road from my property. She'd been gardening for, I'm not exaggerating, over 50 years, and her garden was incredible. Lush tomatoes, beautiful squash, peppers with colors I'd never even seen in a catalog. So I asked her, "Dorothy, where do you get your seeds?" And she just laughed. She said, "Honey, I haven't bought seeds since 1987. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She walked me over to her pantry and showed me rows of mason jars and little paper envelopes, all labeled, all dated, filled with seeds she'd been saving and replanting for decades. Some of those seed lines went back to varieties her own grandmother had grown, and her plants weren't just surviving, they were thriving, better than anything I'd ever grown with my store-bought packets. That conversation changed everything for me. I went home, started researching, started experimenting, and within 2 seasons, I'd almost completely stopped buying seeds. My garden got better. My costs dropped to nearly nothing, and I realized I'd been part of a cycle that, frankly, the seed industry is perfectly happy to keep you in. Here's something most gardeners never stop to think about. Why do we buy seeds every single year? I mean, really think about it. Plants have been reproducing on their own for, what, 400 million years? They don't need a garden center. They don't need a catalog. They don't need a website with free shipping over $50. Every single fruit and vegetable you grow contains the blueprint for the next generation, right there inside it. So why are we acting like seeds are a consumable product, like laundry detergent or paper towels, something you use up and have to go replace? And here's the thing that really started to bother me. The modern seed industry, and I want to be fair here, there are some wonderful small seed companies doing great work. But the large commercial seed industry has a business model that depends on you coming back every year. That's just the reality of it. Think about it from their perspective. If every gardener in America started saving their own seeds, that's a massive chunk of revenue that disappears overnight. So what do? They breed hybrid varieties. Now, hybrids aren't evil, they have their place. But one of the convenient side effects of hybrid seeds is that they don't reproduce true to type. You plant a hybrid tomato, save the seeds, grow them out next year, and you get something weird. Something that doesn't look or taste like what you planted. So you throw your hands up and say, "Well, I guess I need to buy seeds again." And the cycle continues. They also stopped putting certain information on packets that used to be standard, like whether a variety is open-pollinated or hybrid. Decades ago, that was common knowledge among gardeners. Your grandparents knew the difference. But somewhere along the way, that knowledge got, I don't want to say hidden, but it definitely got buried. And then there's the cost creep. Have you noticed seed prices lately? A single packet of tomato seeds, maybe 25 seeds in there, can run you $4, $5, even $7 for seeds, from a fruit that produces hundreds of seeds per plant. One tomato can give you enough seeds to plant an entire garden, and then some. When you step back and look at the full picture, it starts to feel less like a product and more like a subscription service you never signed up for. The method I'm talking about is open-pollinated seed saving, and once you understand how it works, you'll wonder why you ever did it any other way. Open-pollinated simply means that the plant is pollinated naturally, by wind, insects, birds, and the seeds it produces will grow into plants that are essentially identical to the parent. That's the key difference between open-pollinated and hybrid. Hybrids are a cross between two different parent lines, and while the first generation is uniform and often vigorous, the second generation is a genetic grab bag. Open-pollinated varieties, sometimes called heirloom varieties, though technically those are just open-pollinated seeds that have been passed down for at least 50 years. These varieties breed true, generation after generation after generation. And here's what makes this so powerful. Every time you save seeds from your best-performing plants, the ones that produced the most fruit, handled the heat the best, resisted pests better than the rest, you're doing something that seed companies do in labs with big budgets. You're selectively breeding. You're creating a strain that is specifically adapted to your soil, your climate, your microenvironment. After a few years of doing this, you end up with seeds that are, in a very real sense, custom-built for your garden. No seed company on earth can sell you that. The materials you need are almost laughably simple. You need your vegetables, obviously, a few mason jars or paper envelopes, a fine mesh strainer for some crops, a little bit of water for the fermentation process with certain seeds, labels and a pen. That's it. No special equipment, no chemicals, no kits you need to order online. Everything you need is either already in your kitchen or growing in your garden right now. Let me walk you through exactly how I do this, start to finish. Because once you see how straightforward it is, there's really no going back. I'm going to cover 3 main crops that are the easiest to start with: tomatoes, peppers, and beans. These are the big 3 for beginner seed savers because they're almost foolproof. Let's start with tomatoes, because they're the most rewarding and they use a technique that sounds strange but works beautifully. It's called fermentation. And before you get nervous, it's incredibly simple. First, pick your best tomato from your best plant. Not just any tomato, the best one. The biggest, most flavorful, most perfect fruit from the plant that performed better than all the others. That's your seed stock. Cut it open. Squeeze the seeds and the gel around them into a small glass jar. A jelly jar works great. You'll notice the seeds are coated in this slimy gel. That gel actually contains germination inhibitors, chemicals that prevent the seeds from sprouting inside the tomato. In nature, fermentation on the ground breaks down that gel. We're just going to speed up the process. Add about 1/4 cup of water to the jar, just enough to make it loose. Then set it on your counter, somewhere warm but out of direct sunlight. Put a piece of paper towel or cheesecloth over the top. Don't seal it. You want airflow. Now here's where most people get nervous, and I get it. Because after about 2 days, you're going to see mold forming on top. a white or grayish film, and your first instinct is going to be, something went wrong. It didn't. That mold is exactly what you want. It's breaking down the gel coating around the seeds. That's the whole point. Leave it for 3 to 4 days total. You'll know it's ready when there's a good layer of mold on top and the liquid looks murky. Don't go past 5 days though, or the seeds might start to germinate in the jar, and you don't want that. After 3 to 4 days, scrape off the mold layer, add fresh water, and stir. The good viable seeds will sink to the bottom. The bad seeds and pulp will float. Pour off everything that floats. Repeat this rinsing 2 or 3 times until you've got clean seeds sitting at the bottom of the jar. Pour them out onto a paper plate, not paper towel. They'll stick to paper towel and you'll lose your mind trying to peel them off. A paper plate or a ceramic plate works perfectly. Spread them out in a single layer and let them dry for about 5 to 7 days. Once they're completely dry, and I mean completely, there should be no give when you press one between your fingers. Store them in a labeled paper envelope. Write the variety, the date, and any notes about the parent plant. Done. So now, peppers are even easier. No fermentation needed. Pick your best pepper. Let it ripen fully on the plant. And I mean fully. A green bell pepper is actually an immature fruit. You want it red, yellow, orange, whatever its final color is. Cut it open, scrape the seeds out, spread them on a plate, let them dry for a week. Store them. That's it. That's the whole process for peppers. The only mistake people make is saving seeds from peppers that were grown too close to other pepper varieties. Peppers can cross-pollinate. So if you're growing sweet peppers and hot peppers within about 15 feet of each other, your saved seeds might give you some interesting surprises next year. A sweet pepper with a kick, which honestly might not be a bad thing. But if you want true-to-type seeds, give your varieties some distance. About 50 feet is ideal. If you don't have that space, you can cover the flowers with a small mesh bag before they open. Let them self-pollinate. Then mark those specific fruits as your seed stock. Beans might be the most satisfying of all because the results are so immediate and obvious. You don't even need to do anything special. Just stop picking some of your beans. Leave a few pods on the plant at the end of the season. Let them dry right there on the vine. They'll turn brown and papery. When the pods are completely dry, and you can hear the beans rattling inside when you shake them, pick them. Shell them out. Those are your seeds for next year. I've been saving bean seeds this way for 4 years now, and my plants get more productive every single season. It's like they're learning my garden. If you want to be extra careful, spread the dried beans on a baking sheet and put them in the freezer for 48 hours before storage. This kills any weevil eggs that might be hiding inside, because nothing is more frustrating than opening your seed jar in February and finding it full of tiny beetles. Store your bean seeds in a glass jar with a small packet of silica gel or a tablespoon of powdered milk wrapped in a tissue. Both absorb moisture and keep the seeds viable for years. I've germinated bean seeds that were 5 years old using this storage method with no problem at all. In my first full year of saving seeds seriously, I went from spending over $200 on seeds down to about 15. And that 15 was just for new varieties I wanted to try. Things I hadn't grown before. Every staple crop in my garden, tomatoes, peppers, beans, lettuce, squash, herbs, all came from my own saved seeds. But here's what surprised me even more than the cost savings. The plants were better. And I don't mean a little better. I mean noticeably, dramatically better. My saved tomato seeds, after just 3 generations of selection, produced plants that handled our summer heat better than any variety I'd ever bought. They fruited earlier. They tasted, and I know this sounds like I'm exaggerating, they tasted richer and sweeter than the same variety from commercial seed. And that makes sense when you think about it. Because I wasn't selecting for shipping durability or uniform shape or shelf life, which is what commercial breeders select for. I was selecting for flavor, productivity, and resilience in my specific growing conditions. There's also something I didn't expect: a feeling. A connection to your garden that changes when you close the loop, when you go from seed to plant to fruit to seed again, all on your own. You stop being a consumer of gardening, and you start being a participant in something that humans have done for 10,000 years. There's a pride in that, a quiet independence that no seed catalog can offer you. Here's what I want you to do this growing season. Just pick one plant. 1. Don't try to save seeds from everything. That's overwhelming, and overwhelming is how people quit. Pick your best tomato plant, or your most productive pepper, or a bean variety you love, and save seeds from it. Follow the steps I just laid out. Store them properly, and next spring, plant them. When you see those seedlings come up, from seeds you saved, from plants you grew, something shifts. You realize you don't need permission. You don't need a catalog. You don't need to spend a dime. Everything you need, your garden is already giving you. And honestly, once you start, you won't stop. Because every year those seeds get a little more adapted, a little more yours. My neighbor Tom started saving seeds 3 years ago after watching me do it. And last season, he told me, "I'm never buying tomato seeds again." His exact words. If you want to take this further, I've got a video on the best open-pollinated varieties to start with, and another one on long-term seed storage that'll keep your seeds viable for a decade or more. Drop a comment and tell me, what's the first crop you're going to save seeds from? I read every single one of those comments, and I love hearing what you're growing. This is how we take back control, one seed at a time. Not by fighting anyone, not by being angry about it, just by quietly, confidently, doing it ourselves,